Thank you, Saga. A very good morning to one and all present here. I would like to unveil the first Annual Analytics Conclave Anvay 2022 in collaboration with Horizon, the HR Club, Finserv, the Finance Club, and Detonics, the Analytics Club of IIM Sirmaur. The theme of today's disclosure is competing in the data-driven world. And the topic of the panel discussion, which we have today, is the finance analytics for better strategic planning and investment decisions. I would like to request Dr. Anshu ma'am from finance domain to introduce us about the theme and her experience in the field. Over to you, ma'am.
Ma'am, you are on mute, ma'am.
Am I audible now?
Yes, ma'am.
So, good morning, all. First of all, I would like to thank all the eminent speakers who have accepted our request and agreed to join us as the panelists for the today's session. And secondly, I would like to thank the FinServ Club's members also for their sincere efforts. Today, we have joined here for the conclave of the financial analytics. Financial numbers, they are actually magicals who tells us about that what is happening in the business, what is happening in the business, how the business is performing or not. And with the increasing challenges of the business, the emerging need of the environment where the business models, they are changing very frequently, your customers' moves are changing, your competitors' strategies, they are changing, and the challenge and the environment has become more and more demanding. And now to deal with the numbers has actually become a very challenging and a difficult task. But with the data analytics, this task has been overcome a lot, because with the data analytics now it is very easier for us to analyze the past trends and make the forecast very much precise. We can easily know about that how the environment is changing, what is the demand of our economy, how the competitor strategy can affect our business, what the customers they are demanding, and accordingly the strategic decisions and the investment decisions can be made to maximize the value of the business. So today we have the four experts from the industry who will going to tell us about the magics of the numbers and how the data analytics helps us with these magical numbers, and what are the pros and cons of the data analytics when we are taking the strategic decisions with the numbers. So with this notes, I would like to invite our panel moderator, Mr. Sachin Chitlange, who is the Senior Director at KPMG, to take the discussion forum forward and to enlighten our audience with the experts' opinion.
Hello, ma'am. Before that, I would like to introduce the guest and then the moderator will take over.
Okay,
Thank you.
so, okay.
Sure, sure. Thank you. Uh, Hi again. And first, I would like to welcome our first guest, panelist, Mr. Vinamra. He is currently working as a VP for Customer Experience at Analytics at Z Entertainment Enterprises Limited, supporting to the Z5 product experience across the platforms. He holds the MBA from FMS Delhi. His rich leadership experience for 11 years in data science and analytics across companies like American Express, Z Entertainment will definitely make the discussion of finance analytics more insightful. Next, I would like to welcome Ms. Dyuti Lal, the CEO of Nikhil Analytics and the channel partner of Bada Business. She has completed her MBA in Finance and Engineering and Computer Science and is a certified data scientist from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, USA. With over 10 years of experience in business consulting, data science, IT, BFSI industry, she'll have a lot to share with the students. Now I would like to welcome Mr. Sheshadri, CFO at General Mills, India. Mr. Sheshadri is a finance leader with 2 decades of experience in the FMCG industry across Fortune 100 MNCs. He's having a rich experience in complex and diverse roles in business strategy, growth strategy, supply chain financial planning and analysis, and many more. He has held finance leadership options in Procter and Gamble and Johnson and Johnson, and etc. I would like to welcome the last speaker in the panel, Mr. Shiv Kumar, Head of Analytics from Schlumberger. He is an alumni of IIM Kozhikode and IIM Lucknow. He is a data science strategy consulting leader with 15 years of hands-on experience in management consulting and strategy. He has worked with the Fortune 500 companies in consulting and analytics engagement with culturally diversified teams. And last but not least, I would like to extend my warm welcome to our moderator, the panel, Mr. Sachin. He is a senior director at Capgemini. Mr. Sachin is a dynamic professional with 20 years of experience in the area of finance transformation, data analytics, digitization, accounting, and finance. He is also a chartered accountant by qualification. Over to you, Sachin sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anshu and team, for such a warm welcome. I welcome all my co-panelists, and it's always glad to see young and energetic minds from the college and interact with them. So I think though we have kept 10 or 15 minutes for Q&A, we would like to wrap up fast and answer most of your questions and share our experience in the industry. Yeah, so today's session I think is on data analytics, and let me start, with some statistics. International Data Corporation predicts that by 2021, the year gone by, there would be 50 trillion gigabytes of data in digital universe, and there would be 6,000 gigabytes for each individual person. So as the amount of data available for consumption increases, both customers and employees, I think, can make informed decisions based on data. And you and me, everybody, we see the reviews on Amazon or before buying any product these days. I mean, we make informed decision by seeing the data. So with the amount of data available, I think it can delay the decision making because you have multiple options. You sometimes are lost what to do and how to make decisions. And that is where I think data analytics and data visualization, or you can call business analytics and data visualization function has come up to a great extent in every organization. So I wanted to set that context on why why there was only MIS earlier, or why this sudden evolution of data analytics and all. Because I think technology is driving business now. It's earlier technology was making efficient a finance function or HR function, but today I think technology is driving all the business, whether it's your home delivery app or Uber or those kind of things. And all of you are aware, so I don't want to invest time there. And that's why I think having analytics function makes a lot of sense for a CFO organization. Without wasting much time, let's start with the recently concluded pandemic and how relevance was data analytic during the pandemic. So I come from IT industry, and I had the data analytics for the finance function at Capgemini, India. So when the pandemic started, maybe my team primarily focused, in 2008. I'm sure some of you may be in school that time, but in 2008 we had the IT crisis or information technology crisis, and even after Y2K we had the information technology crisis. So what we did this time was uh, compare. This time again during COVID or when pandemic started, people panicked in our organization. The business leaders panicked. How will you recover money from customers? What will happen to the proposals which were made to customers? Which will they get converted into contracts? What will happen to offers which were made? Students were worried. What will happen to the offers which the IT companies have made to us? Will they accept us? People were worried about good talent leaving the company and so on. So we did a very simple thing. We compared, we gave the data of 2008 IT crisis, and we gave some trend analysis of how much time it took for business to recover. And if you remember, after 2008, there was a big boom in software industry, and same thing happened this time as well. So once we gave the data, we gave data of what kind of discounts customer would ask, for example, to recover the money from the customer. How much more time it would take for a deal to close in 2008. So business got pacified looking at those kind of data analytics, and they were more prepared, I would say. And we as an organization were more prepared looking at the 2008 data on how the business could cope up with attrition, how business will cope up with, how much discount we should offer to customer to recover our money, how to close the deals, I mean, against our competitors, what kind of strategy or plan we should do. So based on data, we could make informed decisions. Obviously, the scenario was little different as compared to the IT crisis of 2008. We had to take care of our employees first, give them laptop. So a mammoth mobilization had to be done. But still, we had the data to make informed decisions. That's what I was trying to, make the point. So I think that's why, and that's where, it gave to the birth of a full-fledged data analytic function in 2019 for us as Capgemini within the finance, and this helped business to settle down a lot. Let me go to Sheshadri and ask a similar question. How, because his is a big organization, he leads a big function within the organization. So maybe Sheshadri, if you can introduce yourself on your role and also share your experience on how did you use data analytics in your company or in your industry during the start of pandemic to draw an action plan which will help business?
Thanks, thanks Sachin for the question, and a very good morning to everyone. I'm a bit under weather in terms of, so hence my voice may be a bit soft. So from an introduction standpoint, so I am the CFO for General Mills. A bit about General Mills. So General Mills has flagship brands like Pillsbury, Nature Valley. So it's a food MNC based out of US, a $17 billion dollar enterprise with more than 150 years of existence, right? And one thing about General Mills is that we do have a diverse portfolio. So 50% of our portfolio is, say, commodity sort of essential business, not commodity. So the atta piece, and others would be a sort of B2B business as well. And one thing I sort of agree with Sachin, right? So if you see in the past decade, maybe data availability itself was a question. Only few organizations who had that capability and strength had the relevant data being available with them. I think over the course of the decade, what has happened is now that even every organization, every customer, every vendor, even to the extent of anyone in the supply chain, a distributor as well, has massive amounts of data. Currently, the need is to declutter the data and sort of, and let's take a step back. Why data analytics, right? See, you're all young students coming on the verge of getting into the corporate world. So from an organization standpoint, what is data used for? Why data analytics? See, at the end of the day, insights, emerging trends, and future to be able to forecast with good level of accuracy in terms of what's going to happen, right? This has been the critical need, and this is the critical need of any organization, irrespective of industry, sector, etc. And let me give you a small case in point, and I'll see, things might not be as simple as this, but I'll just give you a small example. So in an FMCG, for example, we launch a food product, say something like a biscuit or cake. Assume that any industry, any company launches a food product, and let's say that there are two variants. One is chocolate, one is dark chocolate, and it's listed in e-commerce. Now, if the way to look at it is, you will get a lot of information on this, specifically these two products. You will be able to find what are the number of clicks which the consumer has done. Has he landed to the, so you will find that if you have clicked on a particular item, even if you are purchasing on Myntra for a shoes, you will find that the biscuit ad will come and will come on your screen. That's because it is tagged. So there are various things where it gets tagged, you see it on your screen multiple times. Then there are information as to, did you click when it appeared on your screen, did you click it, and did you land on the Amazon page, right? And then it will also, so did it convert into a purchase? So massive amounts of data will be there, starting from Whether did you see the ad, did you click it, did you land on the Amazon page, did you purchase? And now this is just data, end of the day. What is the insight you want to have? The insight could be that your price pack architecture or your dark chocolate is selling more versus a regular chocolate, right? It could be that the premium you are charging in your dark chocolate is comparatively less. Hence, a consumer feels that I better pay a 5% premium and get the dark chocolate versus a regular chocolate. This is the business insight. Many times it happens that the strategy itself is to launch two products where the intent is for the consumer to be enticed with the dark chocolate one, which is more premium, which is more margin for the company versus the regular chocolate. We know that the regular chocolate, when it comes to deciding, the person will see and go for the dark chocolate. How does this impact business? There is an entire supply chain geared towards this. You need to do your raw material planning, everything, starting from raw material, supply chain, logistics, to ensure that you have sufficient stocks of the dark chocolate variety versus the brown chocolate variety. Otherwise, you will end up in damages, losses. The initiative will go to a toss. Now, imagine as students, you will be part of the multifunctional team dealing with this. As finance, you will be part of the brand finance team. As marketing, you will be maybe leading the initiative, deciding on which ad, which channel, what's the visibility interface, all those things. As supply chain, you will be planning the entire initiative, right? So each one of you will be part of such a team where there is massive amounts of data, and each data point will be relevant for different folks. For marketing, it could be that the call out of discount in Amazon, and we have seen this, where it said that the call out of discount in Amazon is not visible to the consumer. Hence, the consumer didn't actually click it and went to the different product. So these are some of the things which actually can lead to a lot of insights, etc. Right? So now that we know that data analytics is important, let's see what happened in pandemic. Right? All that I'm saying is basis data, etc. is in the past. Right? What pandemic made is it made the past irrelevant, because we did not have any such. We keep saying it's cliche to say that it's unprecedented, but then the fact that it was unprecedented, wave 1 was completely different. And let me tell you, wave 2 was different from wave 1. Wave 3 was different from wave 2. So if you were to take any inference from wave 1 to predict your wave 2, organizations would have failed, because it was not. We ourselves know wave 3 business is not impacted as in wave 1, right? So you will be left short of stocks, short of supply if you plan basis wave 1, right? So I think what we were able to do as a company is, given that one of the things which we did unique, and maybe it's a strength, because given that we are global, we have global operations, right? So if you see the way pandemic hit us, we were India was impacted a bit later versus other markets. For example, so US already had like 1 million cases, and India was sitting in 1 or 2 lakhs and stuff like that, right? The markets were not exactly relevant to India, but then it also did provide a sort of trend line in terms of how business would sort of perform. So all the analysis in terms of L-shaped recovery, U-shaped recovery, you first have a base and then you can sort of customize it to see for India how does it work with the level of infrastructure, with the level of population we have. And we have information from developing markets as well. So we had Brazil and all those even Southeast Asian markets. So we took out a few markets which had relevant portfolio, and we did a sort of big simulation exercise just to understand 2-3 things. One, uh, see the impact which we saw in pandemic. So all the essential piece the demand went through the roof. Pillsbury atta, cake mixes, you yourselves would have baked at home during pandemic, because it did lead to that kind of behavior. Everyone was under lockdown. You consumed more roti, and the family fathers, etc., baked cakes in their home. right? The demand suddenly went through the roof. It became 2x. But the choice as finance is, do you invest in a more long-term basis on this demand? Because say end of the day, the demand has fallen down. So we knew from the beginning that it's not a demand which is sustainable for a long period of time, right? So there is no point in investing behind capex and long-term investment rationale for this 2x, 3x of demand, right? On the other side, B2B business. So we do sell premixes to bakeries across India. So given bakeries were under lockdown, that demand collapsed. But then again, we knew that it was a short-term thing. So what can be done to ensure that we are able to pass on this phase and sort of with data analytics able to predict what's going to happen in future, right? So we were able to do it with sufficient amount of accuracy where we were able to grow sales, maintain profits, and sort of come out of at least wave 1, wave 2, and wave 3. Right? So a lot of learnings, but I think data analytics was a big enabler for us to get over the pandemic. Back to you, Sachin.
Oh, thanks. No, I remember I was at the Kirana store at the start of pandemic stocking everything, and so I am sure there was a unprecedented boom to stock all data and then do all some gimmicks with cakes and ready to mix and lot of stuff. So very unprecedented, and thanks to data analytics, I'm sure you were more prepared for wave 2 and wave 3. Okay, I will move to Dyuti now. So Dyuti, you are from consulting, and how did you see your clients using data analytics to deal with pandemic, in the industry or in the country? Maybe you can share some insights of your clients. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for asking this question. We are Nikhil Analytics is into consulting, and yes, we are into training as well. So wherein I would like to tell that our clients which were using data analytics consulting, so usually we are into small and medium enterprises consulting. Okay, so there actually what we saw was initially before the pandemic, these companies were not that much data savvy, although we used to always tell that you must be data savvy and rely on the results which data analytics team is suggesting you. But uh, after this pandemic happened, they started adopting this data analytics more and more. And here I would like to say a golden statement. See, this pandemic, what it has done is it has brought an adversity, right? So if you see, it's not that adversity which decides what will happen to you. So it's like, what is your response to this adversity which decides what will be your business story, how it will develop here on. Okay, so this pandemic actually has brought lot of changes and disruption in the decision making process, especially in the SME sector. And we saw that due to after they started adopting this data analytics, they were able to understand their customer buying behavior better. Okay, they were able to understand it better, and they were able to, with the help of data analytics, we suggested, see, this is the trend which you can see now due to the pandemic. Like now here Sheshadri was discussing, like it was little difficult because he was dealing across different markets. But at least in India, we were able to understand that, okay, 1 week to 2 weeks, they were stocking like anything. Or let's say after that, they were not buying into that. Okay, they were not coming out of their houses and doing the purchases. So this helped in understanding the demand, and accordingly, our clients were able to manage the inventory. So proper inventory predictions we were able to do, so that it helped the clients in avoiding the wastage, controlling the cost. Also, in this pandemic, using the data analytics, we tried identifying the top customers for these clients so that they can focus on these top customers provide them the better customer experience, which helped them in getting the repeat purchases, okay, which helped them to manage their business. They also came up with some of the offers which helped them in getting, more and more purchases. And again, with data analytics, we were able to manage the sales as well. With the help of demand forecasting, accordingly, the sales targets were set for these companies and it was communicated to the sales team. And again, with the help of data analytics team insights, we helped the sales team to do proper cross-selling, upselling of the products, okay, which helped them in improvising the sales to some extent and helped in improving the profits. Also, they were able to see ROI in the investment which they did in the data analytics. Okay, so it was a boom. Okay, this pandemic. And apart from that, I would like to say, in terms of training, see, initially we saw that hiring were okay, we had demand in the data analytics, but due to this pandemic, we saw that there was a surge in upskilling in data analytics, and many of our clients were looking forward for hiring hands-on, the candidates with hands-on in data analytics. So what we do was we helped these clients in servicing their demands for hiring manpowers in terms of analytics and data science. So this is what we help the clients in dealing in such a pandemic situation. So over to you.
Superb, Diti. I think, and one of the best example of cross-selling or upselling, which I can remember during pandemic, was Zomato and Swiggy coming out with their grocery kind of business immediately after the pandemic. They knew people will not go to restaurants, so they immediately use the platform to sell groceries. And Swiggy still continues, by the way, though Zomato has got off it. So great, I think, Diti, great insights there. I think let's move from data analytics to a bit of data visualization. And what I mean by data visualization is how should the report look like or your piece of data analytics look like. So I think let's take example of attrition. I for the first time in my life, I regret that why I'm not an engineer and why am I a chartered accountant. The salaries and the demand for engineers in the country with software industry is crazy. I mean, people in software industry are hiring left, right engineers, and then once you are in with being a high performer, you can command and go places. So do I people in MIS or reporting team just produce, okay, so many people left the organization, so many people in this grade, the attrition is 30%, 40%. तो मेरा CEO बोलता है अरे मैं क्या करूँ? Okay, 30% है, 40% है, but okay, next? What do I do with this piece of fancy report which you're showing with red, green, and so on? So I think one of the most important thing is how to present the visualization of data. I think the visualization has to be such which will help business to take action. If there is no action based on your report, it's just a piece of fancy paper. That's what I feel. So we went and said, okay, people working in night shift, this is the attrition. People working from Calcutta location, the attrition is very high. People with data science skills versus testing skills, the attrition is data science is high. And that gave really actionable insights to our management to take some policy based decisions. Night shift allowance was increased, for example, or a location based hiring strategy was done, where to hire more and where to reduce the hiring. So I think it's very important when you present your data, I think it has to be in the right format and in such a format that you can take decisions. And at this point, let me go to Shiv, who comes from a retail industry, and Shiv, if you can throw some light on how right data visualization helped in with a case study in your case, to take right decisions by business. Sorry, Shiv, you're on mute. I think we're not able to hear you. Not yet. I don't know about others.
Please confirm. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you. Yes.
Okay, so I have just unplugged the mic. Yeah. So good morning again, and I think very interesting discussion. Just Sachin, I'll confirm to the audience. So, my journey have been the first half of my career. I stayed into the management consulting areas, and I had a chance to cater banking and financial services, pharmaceutical company, telecommunication firms, retailers, e-commerce. The second half of the journey went into more in the industry. So catering the firm named as Mahindra and Mahindra, and I catered across the group companies, starting from automotive, farm, and agriculture sector businesses. And right now, I'm into the oil and gas, which is more in the energy sector. So luckily, this has been a journey where it has taken up. Analytics was always an enabler, and if I talk especially about the oil and gas, so possibly this is the business where data was embedded since the start, and Schlumberger was in a data business in a way that initially you try to find out where you can identify the oil reserves or gas reserves. Essentially, it's nothing but an interplay of data and engineering that you would like to bring up the result for the business. Now connecting back to the question on the visualization. So I would like to use the 2x2 metrics. So let's plot our skills into the X and Y axis. And let's take up the hard skills. So hard skills are essentially where you learn about the maths, stats, your programming ability, and building a lot of statistical and mathematical models to bring the decision. Now, the question is, if we don't put the story in place using the right visualization, maybe your hard work will be completely lost, because at the end of the day, you need to translate it in an actionable insights, what Sachin was also highlighting. And essentially that needs a kind of a different ability, which I may use the word graphical artisanship. So, and very interestingly, in my career, it have been always an opportunity and challenge where you want to bring up the complex statistical models, and you want to help the business leaders that hey, this is what the message which your algorithm or mathematical models are saying. And let me tell you, the initially we feel that 70% of efforts are involved in the building the model, gathering the right data. However, in my reverse experience, let me tell you, if you're expert on the data and modeling, this is a cakewalk for you. But bringing the data into the right graphical artisanship, where you can translate the business users that, okay, what message or what action you are required to communicate. I think that is one of the most essential piece of the business. And that requires, and in the last at least few years, the one of the skills which is like connecting the data science to business language, which you can call it very easily, storytelling, and a lot of role, and which many of the consulting firms are bringing now, the analytics storyteller in many of the Gartner and many of the global forums, you will hear this term. So this is essentially who has a strong business acumen, and possibly you are able to decode the complex mathematical and algorithmic output, which can be your p-value, confidence interval, or it can be many other things. But how you want to simplify along with your graph and charts, and you want to connect with the business stories, and possibly what Sheshadri was also saying, many of the scenarios where you want to invest into the short term and the long term, the capital requirements. So essentially, these are your graphs and charts, which should actually tell and connect to the users, not the complex statistical jargons. So as a business graduates, this is a great opportunity where you have gone through the quantitative ability, which is nothing but to build the models, but how you can translate it into the business language, which is essentially, turning your data into the actionable insights is the most important skills. And that helps you to bring the return on the table. Otherwise, it turns as a one of the intellectual exercise, and possibly it is not able to help the different functions, which essentially it should integrate with the different outcome and results. Then you're doing an exercise which is just driven by bunch of coders and mathematicians and statisticians. So there has to be a bridge between the complex information to the actionable insights. And nowadays, the firm are investing a very important investment, not only into the tools, but also educating the analytics folks how they can translate their story into the business language. So I think this is one of the most critical piece. No matter what industry you stay in, this turns relevant, and you should be able to simplify the stats into the business language. So that's a two-bit from my side, Sachin, to the audience. Over to you.
Amazing, Shiv. I think connecting to your business is the most important thing. And in finance, we are criticized, or we saying, there's a saying by Shakespeare, ethos, pathos, and logos. So we are good at logos, we are good at logic, being finance guys. We are good as pathos, we are credible with our numbers. But when it comes to connect the feelings and emotions of our business ethos, that is where we lack. And that is where I think we need to groom our talent. We need to tell not the rabbit and tortoise story, but yes, the story, what the numbers say. I'll go to my next panelist who has been waiting very patiently, Vinamra, to guide us on how he has seen talent evolving in his company, and how he has groomed talent, or how should one groom talent in data analytics, and how should we build this storytelling technique to groom our talent. So Vinamra, I think if you can guide us a bit on this front.
Thank you, Sachin, and thank you the other panelists talking through the key points, especially Shiv, right? He touched base on not just visualization, but also the storytelling and why that's important. Arguably, storytelling is important for all jobs. And if I may extend, storytelling is important for parenting, nurturing, at all stages. No wonder you were told bedside stories. And why were you told so? They are memorable today, right? They were persuasive, so you were persuaded, right? And there was a deep sense of engagement, right? So when these three things kind of happen, you drop your guard of intellectual mind, you go deeper into what's being spoken of. And because you go deeper into what is spoken of, your attention span is there. And therefore, you can do the feedback loop of actually, either taking the inputs or giving the outputs of that process. So I would say these three aspects of the storytelling is what makes us human. And end of the day, we are working with the human beings in a day-to-day job. It may appear numbers and facts and figures, but end of the day, it is about taking a decision. With all the data, there is also a set of gut feeling. In all honesty, no models are perfect and no analytics is perfect, right? So there are three elements to storytelling, not to storytelling, to the gunpowder, the raw material to storytelling, which is one, the data, right? Second, the visualization, and third is the narrative itself, right? On the data, obviously we can speak volumes about the data quantity, voluminous data, intensive data processing tools to build models, outputs, representations of data in visualizations, but data from an end-to-end user perspective. So let me talk about a customer journey data from onboarding to discovery to purchase to the help and support experiences. All data pieces talking to each other. So you can actually build the narrative through the throughput of the customer, right? So that's very important from a data point of view. Second is the data quality. I think Shiv did touch base upon that. So because of order, like the cleaner the data, the better the output. Obviously, with the gut feeling and approximation, we can still derive insights, but the quality of data is very essential. Parking that aside, visualization. So while I don't, like, I'm talking about visualization, but I'll appear dumb because I'm not sharing anything with you. So I don't know how I and let me try and convey myself. So in terms of visualization, let me just take one example, one piece of example, right? You're laying out a slide, it should have one message, just one message at the top headline, which should not be what your data is talking through, but the message you're driving through, right? Right. So for example, India to become a $5 trillion economy should invest more in manufacturing. That is your message. And then you have the data below, whatever stack order and the way you can represent. Bottom, you should have the source Why? Because your grandmother were telling the story of the tortoise, right? And you believed in your grandmother. So you need to have the authentic source of data for your executive to believe in your story. Uh, Especially in scenarios when there are broken journeys stuff, right? For example, so you should have a footnote and the source of that data, a data which the larger organization believes as the gospel or the Bible or whatever you call it. Yeah. So you should believe in that, right? So there should be a footnote there. You should seldom highlight several stuff in the in the data itself. So let's say, for example, it's a pie chart. You know, the visualization, the color and the contrast have to be used very effectively. The font sizes are also very relevant. The themes are relevant. So there's a case to look into deck mechanics and the presentation skills separately, but very important on the visualization layer. And now I'll just focus on the third layer, which is the narrative, right? And narrative is not something that you guys do not know. You watch the movies, you know, they have a setup, right? They have a conflict post the setup, and then they would have the resolution phase of the story. So those are the three aspects of the storytelling, right? And while I say setup, you can think of setup as a simple context. So for example, the revenues have fallen in the last period, and the CEO comes to you and asks about, I think it has fallen. First, you need to validate it has technically fallen. Is it fallen for internal, external reasons? Is a seasonal demand which is being taken up? You know, like you baseline it, you do surround sound stat check, etc. to arrive at, oh, okay, it has fallen and by how much and whether it is significant or not. Establish that so that everybody is on same page. It has actually fallen and we are concerned about it. That's the layer one, right? The setup, and like you have to bring everybody on same page with that. uh, Entire department like sales, product, you know, marketing, everybody should agree on that context or this setup. Why it has fallen, you know, like could be the conflict, you know, like you can come into discussion, decision making. While I speak through, more often than not, people have already their own hypothesis why it could have fallen. Like product would have its own set of hypothesis, a sales delivery team might own hypothesis, a tech team might have its own hypothesis, but you are the one who is narrating the story and you have to bring all the pieces and the puzzles together. So for example, in a digital business, it could be an organic growth, a paid growth, right? In my business, it's content driven growth, right? For example, right? So quality of content, the content, you know, hitting the right target user base, right? So it should be a mix of content, product, technology, quality of traffic, mix of traffic. Several things will play a role. You have all this data, so you will bring up the conflict together and derive, you know, like pieces of information such as already alluded to by Sachin. The attrition use case, you know, a specific market is falling, right? So for example, in a specific market, my revenues are falling and an OTT player, it could have to do, and not in the other market, it could have to do with the regional content in that market not performing well and what we can do about it, right? For example, so that will be the conflict, and then we'll come to the last, which is the resolution aspect, which I think Sachin alluded to in a sense that unless you have the resolution, it is of no good use, right? The entire narrative and story. But I would still insist establishing context and bringing everybody together on a context, on a common hypothesis and a problem statement is also a very important aspect. A second, then coming to an agreement on why this would have fallen, reason one, two, three, right? These two are also equally very important, right, in a cross-functional enterprise. And the third layer, then only we will ensue the resolution, and the resolution may be suggestive in nature, an action plan, a data-driven suggestion, an action plan, or a consensus-based input from other partners, because all solutions will not come from data alone, right? So it will come from acquisitions, it may come from an enhancement to a product or a tech feature or a back-end engineering process. It can be n number of things. You would not end up suggesting it as just part of the data team. You know, you would not have the bird's eye view of the technology infrastructure, for example, but you have to rally support from the CTO by representing that data so that the backend and the other processes also becomes augmented. It's a classic example of resolution through a consensus. So the entire organization moves with your flow because you're beaming the lighthouse through your data or the model or the visualization support. The last point I want to bring it, like, let me take an example, a startup example, right? So a CEO came in the room, right, and just mentioned few numbers. He mentioned a revenue number, a cost number, and the delta of the two, which is for the last month, which is the profit or loss they made, the next month revenue number, cost number, and the expected profit or loss they will make. And he showed a very big negative number, and then he placed the salary number for the staff next to it, and in sat all the executives, right? So this is a story I'm telling you, much like the tortoise in the hare story. So there's a salary number which is 3 times the expected profit in the next month. He just laid that out. So you see, like what he did, he set up the context, and the conflict is salary 3 times the the profit, expected loss they will make in the profit they will make in the next month, right? Basis the revenues and the expenses for next month. So he has 1/3 in his kitty to pay to the staff, and all the executives in that startup is sitting next to him. So now he's opening the floor for resolutions, right? Obviously, he can suggest solutions, but he's opening the floor for resolutions as well, and the staff comes up with suggestions, and suggestions such as, the younger staff holds back on salary so that the elderly gets it because they have a family, etc., for the interim, and they also suggest ways to enhance revenues. So then open discussion. So what I'm getting to is, if he could have walked in the room and said, I don't have the salary for the next month, it would not have been a great story. So he brought the company together because he was not looking into cost cutting. He was looking into the adaptability so that the startup sails through, and he rallied support. And he showed also the data, right, which is the profit and loss data, P&L data, right, in an exclusive way on which the cash flow management could be addressed, and the employee aspect of the cash flow management, which is the salaries of the next month. And he optimized on it. So this is a classic case of how you could do storyboarding. The simplest use case I could share right now over a video call, but we can discuss further. Yeah.
Amazing the way you shared the live example. And one of the things on technical solution you were sharing, I think Microsoft gathered this background sharing, or a background which we have convey everywhere on our screen. People were shy to share, their apartment for background and so on, and that was one of the data point which Microsoft acted upon, and a lot of others players like Zoom and all. And we have nice background effects which you can add now, Taj Mahal or something else with whatever you want. So just trying to make a point there on technical solution after the conflict, the resolution which may come up. So I think theoretically you put up great way of narrating conflict and resolution and agreement. So great insights there. I think we're running a bit late, so let me go back to Sheshadri and Mr. Sheshadri. We see more and more people from finance. In fact, in our own company, our CFO became the group CFO became CEO now, and the share price is zooming up in such companies where we see more and more finance guys moving towards business role. So just a question: what kind of mindset? I think we all know now skill set, but what kind of mindset finance folks should develop to come out of spreadsheet business and get into actual VC mindset or a entrepreneur mindset? So maybe some insights on that.
Yeah, thanks, Sachin, for the question. So, friends, I think see, over the course of, say, last decade, you have seen that see, finance, the role itself has moved more towards general management versus say traditional or being related to core finance within the core finance domains, right? So I keep reiterating this in many platforms, right? So if you see a decade back, even a CFO or any finance leader would have been a finance leader with strong understanding of business, right? Now the CEO, the CFO has actually moved on to be a business leader with finance expertise. So you yourself can see the shift in the mindset which is required. First, I think we all need to understand the end-to-end value chain, right? What role does a finance play? If I were to put a sort of crude analogy to it, and many functions do put this analogy. So within an organization, I would say that finance is like the brain of the organization. And why do I say that? The reason I say that is because, see, directly finance doesn't, they don't do sales, right? Do we do sales? Do we go to frontline? Do we lead like actual? Do we do sales? No. So maybe sales and supply chain, two functions who interact with the outer world, are something like the hands and legs of an organization, right? HR from a culture standpoint, etc., could be like the heart of the organization, because strong culture, etc., is required. The reason why I say that finance is like the brain of the organization is because without a sound finance sort of leading an organization uh, in terms of thought leadership, a strong body doesn't will not be efficient and will not reach out to success, right? And hence I say that finance is like the brain of the organization. So for all of you who want to get into finance, I think the first thing is to be business oriented and not to be academic about decision making, etc. So I have seen and generally this comes with experience as well, right? I'm not saying that once you get into the business, so have that mindset where you approach problems from a business angle, where your understanding of, say, sales, marketing, supply chain, all these things will actually IT, all these things, analytics, so all these things are required first for you to be a strong finance leader. Gone are the days when you had to be technically proficient within finance domain to be a strong finance leader. Currently, I think that's a threshold competency in today's world. Even if you were to take core finance domains, controllership, tax, reporting, all these things, you will see that a good controller, a good tax person is the one who is able to collaborate well, business partner with the leadership, or from an organization standpoint with the business, keeping that in mind, right? Because all these things are something like why do I say that these are threshold competencies? Because if there is a control issue, you get pulled up, but the base expectation is that you manage tax efficiently, you manage you have strong control environments within the organization, and that's how you need to function. Only when you see a slip in that is when you are getting pulled up, right? So versus have a growth mindset. So when you are in finance, so I had a sort of a part of a business as well. So there is a brand known as Häagen-Dazs. We have shops. So I do head that from a business standpoint, and it's completely different from a mindset standpoint. So think business. So my advice to you would be uh, have that, wear the hat of a business leader, and you can see from the lens of finance, but then wear the hat of a business leader, because end of the day, see, if you see all the stakeholders, you need to have your strong point of view from finance standpoint, because you are the only one who will be getting that on the table. But the fact is that it has to be, it should not be academic, it should not be only theoretical in nature, which many a times we are guilty of, right? Many a times we can get into too technical stuff. We need to for lack of better words, dumb it down so that people across the board can understand. Suddenly, if I go and start sharing things like you won't get GST credit and all these things to, say, a marketing director, he may not actually get a hang of what I'm saying. But then the way I need to communicate to him is that this is the impact on the cost structure. So from a long-term sustainability of the initiative, my profit goes down by 10%. If I need to make up my profits, I need to price it by 10% higher. and currently it has to be in parity with competition. So me pricing 10% higher, your volumes will not come in. Right now, that's a business way of putting things versus going and saying that you won't be able to get GST credit, and hence you don't have that profitable structure, something like that, right? So there is also always a way to think business. So have that mindset, and I think that will do wonders for you as a leader and for you to grow within any organization. Back to you, Sachin.
Yeah, thanks. I think Sheshadri, it was good. And data analytics is one thing which makes you think business, because if you have right analytics, right visualization, all of it pointed towards taking business decisions and actions, I think you will get that. So great insights, Sheshadri. Let me go back to Dyuti again and ask a bit more of theoretical and backbone on how data analytics and visualization are built. So I think a lot of bottom-up work goes in building any analytics. I think you need to do a thorough research and so on. So what kind of data governance practices, like single source of truth for a data is one example. What kind of data governance practices an organization must follow? Dyuti, if you can throw some light on it.
Thank you for raising this question, because nowadays it is very important. Many organizations are now becoming data-driven, data-centric. So it is important for them to implement data governance in their organization. So just for the sake of audience, I would like to tell data governance in nutshell. If you see, it means you are going to make sure that your data is consistent, trustworthy, and there is no misuse of data. Okay. Now, if I remember correctly, Gartner has laid down certain key points on data governance. Okay. So some of the points I would like to, tell as a guideline for any organization to become, to give consistency in terms of their data trustworthiness. So first of all, I would like to say that any organization which is following data governance practices, make sure that they have assigned right accountability to right leaders. Okay. So in case of decision-making process, people should be confident enough to give the right decisions, and client should be, your stakeholders must have that trust on that accountable person to accept all the decisions. Okay, so accountability is the first thing which I would like to say. Second thing I would like to say is you need to establish trust-based governance. Okay, so whatever decision your decision-making persons or authorities are taking, it should reflect trust. So it should not be just based on the gut feeling. It should be substantiated properly with the data analytics ecosystem. Okay, that is the second point I would say. Third point, I would say it is very important to have in an organization transparency. Okay, so whatever you do with respect to data analytics, make sure the decisions are well documented, and it should be very well substantiated with data. Okay. Then I would like to say you need to develop a proper ecosystem for this data governance. You need to set the right policies, and accordingly you need to develop your training programs, because across your organization all your employees should be well aware of your data governance policies and what they are going to achieve with that, the final outcome. So proper training content should be developed in an organization, and then accordingly the webinar should be conducted, blog should be accordingly rolled out to your employees. Okay. Apart from that, I would suggest that see, this data governance policies and all these are rolled throughout the organization or an enterprise. Okay, so it should be very much collaborative in nature, and you need to talk to your people in an organization in terms of storytelling. What are the benefits of data governance? uh, what is the final business objective an organization is going to achieve? So I believe that these are certain key points which must be taken into consideration while implementing data governance in an organization. So back to you, Sachin.
No, I think very important. I think the role of chief data officer and with GDPR and these kind of laws in different countries, and I think something will come up in India soon. I'm sure with the kind of data evolution which we are seeing in the market. So very important to have right source of truth and right governance in the organization. Let me go back to Shiv and ask what kind of risk management practices an organization should follow from data security perspective. I think we heard about a Cosmos Bank episode in Pune, where a lot of money was stolen, hacking the data of ATM cards and so on. So, and there are a lot of such examples. I'm sure this was a local one, but they're global as well. So very important to have right risk management practices. So Shiv, if you can throw some light, basic risk management practices which an organization should have.
Thanks a lot, Sachin, for this question. So definitely see, as we all the panelists have spoken about how data is becoming the central theme of any business. And let me tell you, I was just going through the various research which happened from 2000 to 2020. The first 10-year was building the data and digitalization backbone. Everybody was talking that, okay, let's have the data sources integrated into the organization. Then we started talking that, okay, let's do the partnership outside the organization and bring the data, which can complement your business, and possibly we can bring the external perspective to build the decision making. So those were the initial 10 years where we happened to build off effort and energy towards building the data ecosystem. Now the last 10 years, and especially if I even forecast the next 3 to 4 years. So if I look at the time period from 2010 to 2020, this is the time when organizations started talking about big data analytics, not in isolation, but they started talking about the organizational performance, right? So it was not now capturing data. Data was already there. We had an immense ability to process that data, means our ability to model those algorithms become more efficient. Hence, now you are able to generate better insights. Now, in the next 3 to 4 years, and now we have in India as well, the Niti Aayog and many of the other entities, they've started talking about the data policies, right? And data policies, one is that how you use your customers' data, and definitely how your ecosystem are going to use in the decision making, right? So we had an initial freedom of, you can say that, a period of freedom where you use the data, you sold the data, and we used the whatever manner we wanted to use, right? Now there's a strong governance, there is a strong compliance that every organization has to build around their information, which is related to customers, which is related to many of the complying authorities that we are required to build up. Now, if I try to look at the risk that is involved when we are moving from the data building ecosystem to now decision making and building the differentiators for the organization. So it is very important, and possibly we are all aware that there have been so much cyber attacks, and we have been threatened by so many different bad events which are going to not only hamper the organization but people in large as well. So now you can imagine there are mammoth size of the data which we are leaving into the public space, which can be related to Aadhaar, it can be related to many of your transaction information, personal contacts. So now there is a strong need, and possibly not only the organization, but the government agencies are coming with a very complying policies and the ecosystem where we want to leave our data into the hyper safe and secure models. Now, when we have moved keeping the data from on-prem to cloud, this is again giving us a lot of advantage also. The cost of managing those data have been very differentiated or differentials in nature. Now you're not required to build a mammoth size of infrastructure at the initial stage. And definitely, if I talk about the data security, which is enabled using the cloud platform, it is much more secure. And essentially, it is in the situation when you are going to talk about many of the technology like data fabric and data mesh, when we are going to use and possibly you want to commit the confidence into the ecosystem, not only to the businesses, but to every individual that your data is going to be secure with us. So the latest tools and technology, if I talk about not a single cloud platform, but across the platform, be it Azure, be it many of the Amazon based the cloud platforms, it is now coming up with the high promise where we want to build the multiple layers of the security, which is going to ensure our safety and security of the data. So these are the some of the contexts which have gone very, very high in talks. Now the investments are coming up, especially because we have the two of the finance veterans here. So let me tell you, the cost of losing the data is very high today. And in my almost all the close association with the finance heads, they have been the first in terms of the building the confidence that, okay, one is what is the immediate ROI you're going to build. It can be your cost leadership, it can be your revenue target, but now they're going beyond of the looking at the cost and the revenue. This is ensuring that the data ecosystem is built into the right rigor and the technology and infrastructure, and possibly there's no threat posed to the organization competitive advantage, which is going to get generated by this data ecosystem. So these are the various contexts which is ensuring the investment as well as the confidence and partnership into the organization to keep the data sets safe and secure. Now, on the moving to the little bit futuristic technology, which is like enabling, and what I think Seshadri narrated, developing the business sense. So connecting to the security to the business sense, possibly there have been a lot of emergence on the low code and the no code technology, which is helping not only the business users directly to play with the data, but this is also giving them technical ability. They are able to decode the complex trends or hidden trends in the data for their decision making. And in parallel, it is going to ensure the data security and governance angle as well. So I think this is a kind of a time when we have moved from data gathering and digitalization to algorithmic revolution, and then putting the data on cloud. Now the most emphasis is going to be governance and the security, and possibly the biggest investments and the skills are coming in that area. So that's the two bit from my side, Sachin, for the audience.
Oh, Shiv, great. I think, and I like your analogy of what is the cost of losing the data. I think I don't think anybody can measure now, because data is everything. I think that is going to run your business. That's the future, and it's already a lot of people are deciding on data to make their decisions. So great insights there. And as promised, I think we'll like to go more into Q&A with students. So I'll go back to Vinamra for my last question, and some other panelists also can join after Vinamra pitches. But so how should students look at the data analytics and data visualization from career perspective? So if you can throw some light, Vinamra, on that, and then if needed, other panelists can also contribute to this question, and then we can move to Q&A. Yeah.
Sure, Sachin. I think in my last response to the storyboarding also, I went to the professional and the on-the-job aspects. But from a campus and career perspective, if you're looking for careers into analytics, there are things you learn on the job. There are things that you should be prepared before the job. So things like deck mechanics and basic deck mechanics is the part of the storyboarding you should be worried about right now. The larger storyboarding you'll learn over your job, over the large period of experiences that you'll accumulate working with several people and organizations, right? So you can park that for future. There are two more things that you should learn about the storyboarding only. One is that you should prepare your about yourself. That is your story, right? And it should be time bound. The first question usually asked in the interviews. Please do prepare for that. I'm sure it would have been shared with you on Teams times, but that's the first impression I'm making. Large number of interviewers rely on that first impression. Large numbers do not, like, because like few people also appreciate the larger interviews, but I'm just sharing that as an input to you. About yourself is also a story about your professional experiences until your MBA and previous projects and efforts that you've taken relevant to the job. Second is, while you just join the job in the beginning, let's say you join as a management trainee or an analyst or an assistant manager, whatever level you join in, basis your past expertise and experiences, you should prepare a pitch. Now, this pitch could be a 30-second pitch to a 1-minute pitch, depending on the interest of the audience, right? So let's say the head of department walks by you and says, "Hey, Akansha, what are you working on right now?" You should have a 30-second pitch ready, right? At that moment of truth. When you're in 6 to 12 months in the job, that will give them more confidence in you and give you more opportunities and projects at the very starting stage of your career. And depending on the engagement, you should have the ability to make the 30-second pitch to a 1-minute pitch and so on and so forth. So do prepare for these two storyboarding, which is more essential in the at the campus and just post campus stages of your career. And the later on, obviously, each one of us are learning over the job over the larger periods of time. Yeah. Now coming to the careers in analytics, right? So how to look at it is like there could be a horizontal approach and a vertical approach, right? Now, like while only 4 people will work on data in an organization of like 400 people, let's say, or maybe 8 people in an organization of 400 people. But core data experts would be like 8 to 10, maybe data engineers, etc. But the larger organization deals with analytics. Now, why I say so is the vertical approach. So we have finance folks sitting here. They would have audit analytics as a field that is developing. Financial reporting and analytics was already there. You would have product heads who would need product analytics and the experience analytics guys to consult and help them through the journey. They would have a customer service, the operations forecasting folks who working hand in glove with them to prepare the chat centers in the call centers for upcoming volumes events and those kind of efforts. So I'm talking about vertical approach. Largely every vertical would have an associated analytics lead or a person to support in each stage of decision making. And they ultimately all of those analytics folks should roll up into data. And why so? To have data driving the truth, not leaning on to the vertical. And I'm choosing my words carefully. Yeah. So that's how the structure would look like. The second second aspect is the horizontal one. These are vertical, and then there would be horizontal aspects of it. So you could be a data science expert, you could be a BI and dashboarding expert, you could be a data engineering expert, right? You could be, you know what, like you could be an expert from a point of view of statistics as well, right? So a lot of like A/B experimentation, MVT, all those experimentations we build on the platform and off the platform also, right? For example, in our collection processes in my previous companies, we would run a lot of experiment there as well, right? So we need a statistics kind of a background there, right? So these are the horizontal, which will cut across the verticals. So that's how you have to look into it. And I did forget mentioning HR. HR analytics is coming pretty big way. And you know why, right? So you must be applying for jobs outside. Previously you must have applied. You must have seen the broken journey, the employee experience, applicant experience journey is a bit broken there, and there are works being done on that side as well, and there are optimization benefit for both parties, right? From talent acquisition point of view, so that field is strongly coming up, very relevant in great resignation era, right? So these verticals are coming. That's how you to look into, right? Now over time, obviously you will build the domain expertise, so you could be domain intensive, it could be vertical agnostic, or you could go deeper in each of the domains and build understanding of the HR or the product or the finance. Yeah, and over time you want to, like learn about more than one vertical and more than one industry, right? So that will happen over time. But like in the starting phase, how you to look into analytics is you must find a vertical to fit into and then develop deep understanding of that vertical, or you should build a horizontal skill so that you can deeply, kind of integrate with any of the verticals. End of the day, you will need business sense and the business context, which will come over time, and that is very essential in your later stages of career. Yeah.
Fantastic. I think the way you put the vertical and horizontal, the matrix structure, I think I really loved it. And I think our students, any other panelists would like to contribute to add to what Vinamra said?
Very interesting, Sachin. I'll just add few of the angle, and I think Vinamra has captured a very good view of the multiple verticals. So let me tell you, especially for the management grads, and for my last 5-6 years, I've been building the talent around the data and analytics. So Mahendra was the role where I joined as a first employee to set up the in-house analytics and consulting arm. So let me tell you, when we started looking at the talent, so one is, as I go with my analogy of hard skills, forget about that I consider after having that experience is just the part of the game. But where you want to build the business use case to conduct analytics. And I believe, from the finance angle, no any organization would like to invest until unless you have a sufficient ROI on that use case, right? So in analytics industry, imagine that organization might be facing hundreds of problems, right? However, you would like to prioritize top 5 or 6 problems which can bring the maximum value to the table. So now being a management grad, you can play the role of various analytics engagement, right? Which happens with the business users, and imagine the multiple functions which Vinamra has talked about. It can be sales, manufacturing, procurement, marketing, HR, and so on, right? And then there is your technical team who is kind of a factory, or you can say that a strong ability in building algorithm, but they lack the capability of translating it back to the business users, right? So in between the layer comes where the many of the bright management graduates like you can play a significant role. So we call it either you call it analytics collaborator, analytics advisors, where you understand what is the data science, what are the application and algorithm for a different use case, and then you're able to translate back to the businesses about the decision making, help them driving adoption, right? So this is a very different skills which you are required to build up. So the adoption is essentially, where you ensure that once the investment and the development has gone on that product solution or algorithms, how you're able to help businesses to monetize it, right? And bringing back value to the table every year. So this I again feel from the management graduate, this is a great energy and the skills gap which you can fill up. So, a monetization side of it. Now, another which is like a strongly on the analytics storyteller, right? So these are the skills which essentially are lacking in the industry. And if you go by many papers and forums, more than 60 of the roles have been created now in the organization, which moves from data to insights to action to adoption and so on. And possibly, I had a chance last year with one of the IIM to talk on the, analytics strategy consulting, right? So imagine in today's time, be it a marketeer, finance person, manufacturing head, everybody has to bring value to the table, and there has to be somebody who can integrate all this data together and see the big picture where the organization is heading, right? And it can be your CEO, it can be CFO, it can be your operation heads, but somebody has to unify this data and possibly look for the bigger use case. While every function is solving their own problem, but there will be a big problem for the organizational strategic growth and the move. So I think these are the areas which is coming up with a high incentive, or you can say reward. And it is very obvious that you must have gone through many of the articles that 21st century highest paid jobs or sexiest jobs from HBS and so on. So I think this is the era, and coming decade is going to be more intense when we are going to talk more on sustainability side. We are going to talk more on governance side, and the all the ecosystem coming together to drive the many of the global ecosystem or the promises which across the globe we are going to see. So I think I just thought to add a few of the points, Vinamra and Sachin. Over to you, Sheshadri, Dyuti, if some thoughts here.
I think if no, we can open up for question, Bhushan or somebody from the team. What's the process? If you can, yeah.
Okay, now we'll be moving to the Q&A session. Students can raise your hands and we'll call their names one by one. Yes, Komal, you can go ahead with your question.
Everyone. So my question is for Sachin sir. Sir, as you talked about data governance, what would you say to an organization that may not, or they think that they don't have technology to back the data governance program in their organization?
See, large organizations like us, no big organizations will have perfect systems. I think the way they have evolved, and this is where large organizations struggle. So the upcoming organizations like Uber or new organizations, they're all created new. So they come up with layers of governance, and government makes policies for them because they're new in the business. But large organizations, especially in banking sector or even in complex organizations like us who have gone inorganically, I think it's not easy. You will have multiple systems which you have acquired over a period of time, and having a common layer of data governance, or even for that matter, let's say single source of truth. For example, defining customers in our system, our customers having single source of truth. Ideally, CRM should be the single source of truth from where the sales starts. But you'll have multiple sources of truth. Just case in example. So finance will define customers, sales will also define their own set of customers. So there's no single set of customer data, same customer data replicated, in multiple databases. So I think Shiv also touched upon it, and Dyuti also touched upon it, that having a data officer, I think that is the start of the journey of data governance. So having a data officer, I think the first thing to do is to make ownership of data. For example, customer data is responsibility of sales team. Supplier data is responsibility of procurement team. For example, chart of accounts for finance is responsibility of the finance team. Any new business unit or account code to be opened is a responsibility of finance. So once, I think that is the most important base or starting point. Once that is established, ownership is established, then the technical team comes into play and establishes the role of data governance on what kind of MDM tool or master data management strategy should be followed, and then everything falls in place. But large organizations struggle because the way they have grown, and today the requirements of data analytics which are there, you still have some manual data massaging which will happen when you combine multiple sources of data and try to visualize on a tool like Power BI or something. So it's very difficult to answer straightforward, and this is how you should follow data governance. But every organization will have a strategy. But the idea is to have a base ownership, and then go to a MDM strategy or tool, and then MDM tool, and have single source of truth, and have your data governance established.
Thank you, sir.
Vishali, you can go ahead with your question.
Good afternoon to all the panelists. Thank you for such an insightful session. So my question is to Sheshadri sir. Sir, as you said, finance is the brain of organization, and gone are the days when you need to focus just on core finance. So with data analytics, how an organization can enhance and extend its business processes, keeping in mind data risk factors.
Thanks, Vaishali, for the question. See, I think nowadays, if you see data is there across functions, across there is external data, there is a lot of data which gets churned even from an internal data standpoint, right? So I think currently from an organization standpoint, there is an acceptance in terms of that data analytics is the future, right? So if you ask any leadership of any management of any organization, they they will say that so data analytics is the future. All the companies are actually investing in their capabilities to step up data analytics. I think what is true is that I think organizations also understand that there are risk factors. There are, and let me tell you, more than say from a governance risk, etc. There is also a risk of uh, say concluding too early based on data or identifying the wrong insights. And I'll tell you, because see, data analytics, there are many things which throw up, which is counterintuitive, or which maybe if you take the decision in hindsight, you realize that that was not the insight what it was meant for. Because currently what's happening is uh, more and more the need is to take or the need is to get insights on real-time basis. And see, currently what's happening? So we want data analytics to aid decision making. That's true, but we also want it to be real time, right? And because the decision making happens real time, so these are some of the factors which from a management standpoint is more takes more thinking time and more worrying factor versus governance, etc. Because currently the organizations themselves are evolving. So no one has, and as Sachin pointed out, so leave alone the new organizations, something like Uber. So all the technology sort of based organizations, they have a different issues, right? To in terms of governance, etc. Companies like FMCGs, etc. So we want consumer insights, we want trade insights, so we want emerging trends. So those are some of the things which you are actually looking for when we say data analytics. How to simplify the process, and it could be anything, and it could be even from a finance standpoint. So a lot of, so even in General Mills, we are adopting AI tools, etc., to do traditional reconciliations with modern trade accounts. Would you imagine that the data thrown by these AI tools actually helps in decision making in terms of how we are approaching modern trade accounts? In the earlier scenarios, these were all not thought of. It was only thought as a finance backend process. Doing as mundane as reconciliation, you wouldn't realize that it would help you, say, align terms of trade with Amazon, with DMart, all these things. But that's how the interlinking and the business linkage is happening. So from an organization standpoint, I think these, to get maximum utility of such cases is very important versus governance. I think, of course, governance is critical, but I think these are some of the things which the organization, manufacturing industry, and those kind of traditional industries are looking for. Hope it answered your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Gayatri, you can go ahead with the question.
Thank you, Akansha. Good afternoon, everybody. I have a question to Dyuti, ma'am. When asking individuals about data management and data governance, some argue that they can be used interchangeably, while others propose that there is a distinct difference between the two. Ma'am, could you clarify about this?
Thank you for asking this question. So actually, if you see, there is no, proper line, differentiating the two. I would say that it could be used interchangeably, because if you see that data management is also an important part of your governance. Okay, so here what happens is, to make sure that you have consistent data, you have to make sure the sources from which you are extracting the data and you are storing the data. So it has to be proper integrity checks have to be done. Okay. And you need to make sure that your data, first of all, whether it is a valid data and valid data is there or not. Okay, so this data management and governance policies will be set, right? So based on the governance policies, what you have set, accordingly you are going to check it, and then you will make sure that okay, your data is proper. Now based on that, further decisions can be derived and data can be analyzed, and proper data points can be derived, and further it could be used by your stakeholders to take right decision. So here I would say that both are interchangeably used. Very thin line is there.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bharat, you can ask your question.
Thank you, Akansha. Thank you, panel, for the insightful session. I would like to ask Vinamra, sir, what is the relevance of edge computing and augmented analytics in terms of fintech industries?
Uh, I can touch base on augmented analytics because I've not extensively worked in area of the edge computing, and I'll talk about that in general. Yeah. So, assisted tools and techniques that we use in the field of analytics, advanced analytics that we use in areas. Augmented analytics is not just relevant to fintech, I would say. Augmented analytics would be relevant even to an industry like entertainment sector, right? So, the if your question is more around what is its role, it's in very nascent stage right now, as used in the industry. Only the advanced use cases are still coming up, but it would be relevant to bulk of the industries, I would argue. Edge computing will give you more power of computing and therefore faster decision making at your fingertips. But then it would have limited use cases, in my opinion, right? Because in not all industries and not all decision points would you need um, such a speed of computation, because there's a trade-off between the computation power, the cost to it, and the decision and the output of it, right? So I'll still argue that, so I'm not an expert in that area, so you're asking that question to me. But what I feel about edge computing is what I'm sharing with you right now. Yeah. I hope that satisfies your answer, but I'm not an expert on edge computing. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Megha, you can go ahead with your question.
Thank you, Akansha. So, my question is to Shiv sir. So, sir, since the financial critical, and how would you suggest to handle such a large amount of data with the ensured accuracy? And are there any tools, specific tools to do that?
Yeah, Megha, so I would request you to repeat the question. I think there was a little bit internet issue in between.
Sure, sir. So my question is, since the financial data is quite critical and it cannot be played with, so how would you suggest to handle such a large amount of data with the ensured accuracy? And are there any specific tools for that, to handle such a data?
Right. Thanks a lot for the question. So let me tell you, definitely the journey of the data, as we talked about, and the quality of data is improving and enriching day by day, right? So by saying that, definitely you will be always dealing with multiple types of the data issues. So if I talk about, at least on the quality front, algorithmically, or there are many techniques, like we do the outlier treatment, you may be doing the missing value treatment, you might be doing a lot of treatment on the data which can remove the noises, right? So this is, I think, on the side where you, if you would like to understand how we can enrich the data, yes, there are many of the simulations, there are many of the mathematical techniques which are used to refine the data quality. Now, in terms of the criticality, yes, because if you don't treat the data, your outcome may be very haywire, and then possibly your decision making may also suffer around it. So yes, there are methods and tools, and I think with the right data governance tool also we can streamline on the many of the data inflows which is happening from the multiple sources. So yes, we do use techniques and tools to keep the data in shape and which can be used rightfully. Now, I think I'll just, Vinamra, I'll try adding from the last question because in my journey, I haven't to, explore a lot on the edge computing side of the use cases. So imagine on the workshop and imagine manufacturing or imagine the current oil and gas extraction process. This is very, very, a kind of a critical activity, which is very sensitive in terms of safety and security. We are using many of the edge computing algorithm and devices, which can provide on real time recommendation to use the tools in a prescribed manner so that you can avoid any accidents, right? And this you can't do using the long historical data because it has to be then and there, right? Imagine that lot of readings, in the older term, there has to be a chopper or a helicopter to go and fly in the rig and take the readings of the various activities, right? Now we have the many of the vision-based algorithms and the tools deployed, which is capturing those on real time, those information and data. So these are the use cases around the edge and IoT, use cases, which is saving the cost and enhancing the efficiency a lot, and also saving the life in a way, because it is working on a real time as you're operating the equipments or performing activity in the manufacturing side. So I think just I thought to close loop on the previous question, and I hope Megha, you're clear that we have the tools and techniques to use the critical finance data. Back to
yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, students and the panelists. Now I would like to call Archita to give the thank you note.
Thank you, Akansha. Esteemed panelists and fellow students, it's an honor to deliver this vote of thanks on the second panel discussion of Anvay, the Analytics Conclave. On behalf of the teams Horizon, Datonics, FinServ, and our entire institute, I would like to extend a hearty note of thanks to all speakers for gracing us with your insights and opinions on today's topic, that is financial analytics for better strategic planning and investment decisions. We have been fortunate to have a panel of diverse finance and analytics experts. The session was insightful and had a lot of takeaways. Just to mention a few, how data visualization helps in the decision-making process, how to handle large amounts of critical financial data with accuracy, how we can manage data governance and risk management in a data ecosystem, and lastly, some important career aspects in data analytics which can help us students a lot. Once again, it has been our tribute to host all the panelists. I'm also thankful to all the students for participating in this session.
I would just say thank you for all the students, for the Anvay team for the professional way in which you have conducted this event. So thanks and job well done.
Thank you for inviting us. Thanks